Hi there. I am the CRM Ninja, and on today's episode of the Oops Factor, I have Ishvar Prakash. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
It's great to have you on. I've been following some of the amazing things that you're doing in the artificial intelligence space. It's always good to be able to see great concepts there.
Yeah, it is. It is one of my passions. So yeah, absolutely.
Indeed. Now, another passion of yours, I understand, is the reason why my head is sort of floating in a musical score sheet of music, because I understand that you compose.
Yes, I do. It's been a few years now because I'm focused on my masters that I'm doing in artificial intelligence. But yeah, I would like to come back to it in starting September. But yeah, I do compose music. Yeah.
How did you get into it? I know very few people who compose music, so I really am interested into when you started, how you started, what got you into it.
Um, I've always liked music. As when I was growing up, I always liked music, right? So, but I didn't know how much I liked it or how where my creativity works better
Okay.
until I had an opportunity to do it. So I've got this. We got a temple where we go,
Okay.
and they do have this musical thing right there, right? Sort of like a temple music sort of thing.
Yeah.
And someone basically said, Ishwar, I know that you play instrument. Why don't you do something there? And I went, okay, fine, but I can't replicate the kind of music that I've heard and which I would like to sing. So I want to simplify it. I got, hang on, how can I simplify it? So I just sat there and I wrote scores, right, to simplified versions of what I've already heard. And that basically got, well, this is something that I quite enjoy. So I started experimenting more and more, and I'm here.
That is incredible.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now it's a bit like, I guess, obviously lots of people read books and stuff. To be able to write a book, and that's using something which we're generally familiar with, and the concept of it is amazing. So what's the most complex piece that you've written to date?
I am actually writing one, and I had to pause it because like I said, I'm focused on something else, but
Yeah.
it's always playing in my mind. So this one is we all know Game of Thrones. I was a big fan. I quite like the structure and the characters within it, and one of the characters inspired me a little bit. So what I did was I took the theme music, the structure, the philosophy behind the theme music. I turned it. I turned it into a piano concerto, and I'm writing it right now. And it is a theme for that particular character. I won't yet say which character that is.
That's
I
fine.
would like people to get surprised when they listen to it when they get it there. So I just turned it, and I'm writing the piano piece at the moment. It's a piano concerto about 4 or 5 minutes long, but
Wow.
it's sort of halfway parked at the moment. I'm just waiting to relax a bit after my MSc so that I can do more.
That is I can't wait to hear it.
Thank
I
you.
have all the I've watched a bit of Game of Thrones, but I have all the books and read all the books. I'm much more
Yeah,
a
yeah.
fan of the books itself than the actual series, but that's it. But have you ever looked into AI creating music? Because obviously there are AI capabilities out there for creating images. You can give it like keywords and it goes away and creates unique images based on that. Is there such a concept with music?
There is a lot of research, academic research. I mean, properly supported. For example, my university supports research into music using artificial intelligence, primarily as a way of preserving some of these, very rare instruments, which there are no more players around. Like, and they are focused very much on doing that, especially in say, look, play a piece of music, preserve it, replicate it, in the idiom that it is written in. So if it's a
Yep.
Western music, written by Mozart, can it write a symphony like Mozart? Sort of thing, right? So there is research happening like that. But very keen. I'm keen on a different aspect of artificial intelligence. I can talk about it when we get some opportunity. But ultimately, it is preservation that is very, very important because it's the model that you're talking about, DALI, which is the one that basically creates pictures. The idea behind building such models is not as a it's nice to have a gimmicky thing like, oh, you know what, you can generate images, but the idea behind all of this research is not just to show out the power of AI, but how can you use AI to preserve some of these very intelligent, very sort of basic things that needs to be preserved. Like, very simple recipe. My grandma and my ancestors had cooked certain things in certain way. Can we allow AI to be modeled in such a way that it can remember that recipe at some point of time in the future? It can tell us how it is. That is where I think all of this research is leading into, and it's a very important piece of research. Myself, I'm very much interested in preserving languages using AI, and that's
Right.
where I'm heading to.
Wow, that's amazing. So going from your love of music to Oops Factor, what do you have to share?
Right. Okay. So this is one of those things which I'm sure many people have encountered it, but they don't talk a lot about it. But I would like to talk about it only because of the fact that I think that when people start up, when people start get into the computing world, there is a tendency for us all to think, and we all have come through that process where you think, well, actually, I can never make a mistake, right? I know what I'm doing. I can never make a mistake. So here's one. So I had just arrived from India. I was a young blood. I just arrived from India, and I was working in London, and I was working for my organization, which was doing something for a very large, important public services in London, right? Something very close to the government, right? And I am sitting there. I'm supposed to be deploying a piece of software. That's fine. It's a Unix operating system, right? If anyone has seen Unix, yeah,
not Windows.
It's quite a majestic operating system if you know what it is. So I'm sitting there, and if you have seen Unix, if you've worked with Unix,
I have seen Unix. Obviously, yeah. Linux is a slight flavor, and Mac.
Absolutely.
I mean, the Mac OS itself, the underlying thing is Unix itself.
BSD, yeah. Yes, absolutely. So I'm sitting there, and if you're seeing these days the prompts are quite nice. It basically tells you where you are in the disk, right? But whereas Unix prompts are quite I would say very curt in the way it presents things. It's just a hash, right? And it's blinking hash there. So I'm sitting there, and I'm supposed to be deploying something, and I needed to copy some files over, right? And remove the files after I have copied it over. I've put it in the right place, remove it. So I am sitting there in a remote desktoping from a Windows into a Unix box using SSH. I'm sure you're aware of that. And I'm sitting there. I don't know which window I am on. There's no coloring or anything like that. So I'm basically sitting there. I'm going RM minus RF dot. I know exactly what that means. So I mean,
for the uninitiated,
remove files, recursively remove files. Don't ask me what they're removing, and just delete everything. So I basically went in and removed it. And Unix is such a nice boy. It basically just removes everything and sits there, basically going, okay, what next, sort of thing. And I look at that moment of time, I look at the window title, and I'm actually in the production box. So I was like, what I have literally done is I have removed a bunch of files from the production box without realizing that I've removed it. I looked at the title, and my face went ashen, right? And my project manager sitting on the left, I turn around, and he basically looks at my face and goes, "We need backup, don't we?" Yes, we do.
That was going to be my next question, which is going to be, in the spirit of in line with best practice, not just in the spirit, but in line with best practice, had you carried out a backup of the system before you did anything on it?
Yes. Thankfully, it was just a bunch of documents that I deleted. I didn't read the program. I didn't delete the database. It was very, very much a bunch of documents which we could restore, and we could get it back from the backup. Considering the fact that documents don't change as dramatically as a piece of data in a database, It
That
was
is
all
great.
right. I came out without too much of a hash, but it was a very good lesson for me to not trust my ego all the time. For me, when you, especially when you're starting out, you need to be very, very conscious of what you're doing. As in, you need to know what you're doing. You need to know why you're doing what you're doing before you make that fateful sort of decision. I'm just going to remove everything from it is. So that is my contribution to your risk factor.
It's interesting because in this scenario, you're saying your manager was there sitting there, it was over your shoulders, he was sitting next to you. And I know I've had it back in the heady days of CRM3 or CRM4 when Azure DevOps did not exist and TFS was not properly being able to be used for these sorts of things. Whereby you got something in place and then the person over your shoulder, or sometimes if it was a hot fix in a
Yeah,
production environment, I know we shouldn't be doing that, but
yeah.
it all happens to all of us. You have two people behind you, and it then goes and you get both of them to confirm. So was he just passively watching what you were up to, or was he actually part of that deployment process?
No,
Could you did you sense check with him?
well, but considering the fact that this person was a very, very dear friend of mine, and he's a very good guy. Considering the fact that he's a project manager, I have a feeling that he was not quite aware of what's going on, right? For me, someone typing in a command there, especially very sort of quirky commands that Unix comes up with, like RM
Yeah,
and ch mode and all that. So when you look at it, it doesn't feel like it's something. It doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like I'm doing anything very specific, and especially with the fact that you've got a hash prompt and there is nothing there. My project manager is going, okay, well, probably he knows what he's doing, right?
true.
But that one of the I still do it. I am not saying that I don't do it, especially in Linux when I'm working on Linux. By the way, I'm talking to you from a Linux machine. So in a Linux machine, you at least have the prompt to tell you exactly where you are, so you know what you are deleting or what you are doing, irrecoverable thing, sort of thing, right? So when I'm what I would my advice to people is that the kind of flags that you get, very powerful flags like -F, which is force and don't ask me, sort of thing. It's very tempting for us to do that, like control or shift
Yeah,
delete, a sort of thing, like really. It's very tempting to do that because then you don't have to go to recycle bin and trash it, sort of thing.
indeed,
But at
indeed.
the same time, it's very important that you look at which window you are, you look at what you're doing, be aware, very much aware of what you're doing, especially in organizations like huge public service organization.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine if I had actually done something like that on a program directory or an etc directory, what would have happened to that system. It's
It
it's very it's
probably
very it's very
it probably would not have been a very happy bunny.
no, no, no.
But even on Windows, which with command prompt and with
Mhm,
elevated command prompt, so you're with administrator, local administrator rights,
mhm.
or with PowerShell, you have the same sort of switches available. You're moving
Yeah.
files, you have the /y to
Mhm.
to disable the prompts and stuff. So I guess with great powerful commands comes great responsibility.
Absolutely, completely agree, completely. And that would be my advice to folks starting out with these massive, amazing things. Like Azure is a great thing. It's so easy to just click on a resource group and go delete. It's so easy, right? So all it is no, tell me which you're deleting, confirm that for you. At least that way, at least you can look at it and, well, you're doing something terrible there, right?
Yeah,
But such resources are, it's so easy for us to make those mistakes. Be very, very mindful of what the actions you're doing. That would be, especially people who are starting up in computing. It's
yeah,
it's very
that's true.
important that we understand that.
That's true. I guess, when thinking about, the Windows desktop or dealing with Windows servers, but dealing through the GUI, you use your mouse to right
Yeah,
click and delete or whatever, you
yeah,
get the prompt. And sometimes those prompts can be really annoying. Do you want to delete? Yes. Are you sure
yeah,
you want to
yeah,
delete? Yes. Are you very sure?
yes,
Or when dropping
yeah,
a database on a SQL server,
yeah,
please confirm that do you want to drop? Yes, please confirm that you want to do it. Type in the database name, things like that.
yes,
It can be annoying when you go back, the pureness of using native commands. You have the power for that, but again, you don't have those safeguards in place,
Yes,
because
completely
the
agree.
system will just go ahead and do it. So
Absolutely. And I think that is the key. You're absolutely right. Those kind of command prompts, while it feels extremely powerful, and I'm sure you've seen these debates happening in Linux community about Arch Linux, the fact that it's very pure in the sense you just get a terminal basically, and much it just takes them back to the sort of unique days, I guess. Just Arch Linux is one of those things, very simple. Maybe you'll have like 3 MB, 4 MB sized operating system, but you have all this space for data. But where you lose that is, especially when you do not know what you're doing, the safeguards of like you said, safeguards of that extra prompt, annoying prompt that pops up. Do you really want to do it? That is missing. Like that goes away, and you are literally in the world of by bits and bytes, and it's very easy for us to quickly go, well, rm minus r dot sort of thing. At least without an f, you at least get prompted as to what you're deleting. But with f, which is force, you don't get that either. I see there are lots of dash force in PowerShell these days as well, where it doesn't ask you anything. You just does what you're asking you to do. But yeah, it's amazing how far the world has gone and come to. And how it used to be before, where things like this, there was no space for us to sort of make a mistake. Where now you got that space only because there is a two recycle bins protecting you at least at some point, somewhere, which probably helps, I guess.
Hopefully, yes. I remember running a Windows test bed one time where I put the recycle bin down to 10 megabytes, so that which was the minimum, because you couldn't get rid of the recycle bin, but I just wanted to skip it, because anything larger than 10 megabytes would automatically just get permanently deleted. So always ways around, but yeah. But Eswar, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story.
No. If it helps people take a pause before they make this tremendous decisions, life-altering decisions like that, it's always helpful.
Indeed. Very, very true. Viewers, we hope that you've enjoyed this episode and learned a lot from it. Feel free to check out the rest of the Oops Factor playlist, subscribe to the channel, take a look at the blog. And if you would like to come on the show, put your details somewhere in the link below and I'll drop you a line. But above all, have an amazing day.